Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back with for another episode. And as always, joined by my co host Lola. And today we have Ekong. First of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today.
Wonderful. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. So excited to get into our conversation.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
Hmm. Wow, where do I start? I've been in the entrepreneurship space for I'm not going to tell you the number of years because that will just give away my age. But I've started my career in the UK. As you can tell from my accent, I'm from the UK, but originally from Nigeria. But in the UK, I basically worked in on government regeneration programs in the entrepreneurship space. So we basically supported local communities engage in what we call area-based regeneration, which is when we develop an area, we want to ensure that local communities, particularly ethnic minority communities, are benefiting from business development in that space. And I particularly honed my skills around women's entrepreneurship. We set up one of the first women's enterprise programs in London way back when. Again, I'm not going to tell you my age. And I've been very much working in that space to ensure women get access, women get the support they need to build businesses, sorry. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And I guess my passion for Africa, really, number one, from birth, I'm a Nigerian. I'm a very proud Nigerian. But more importantly, in 2012, I was charged with working with the London Development Agency to put on an event in London for the 2012 Olympics to promote Africa as an investment destination, particularly targeting African diaspora communities in London. And we basically ran the largest B2B event during the London 2012 Olympics for Africa investment. And I'm there convincing the world, the audiences that we have, that Africa is the place to be, is the next big boom. And as African diaspora, we must be looking in those spaces to invest and to do business. And here's me sharing all this excitement, and I've never worked in Africa before. And I thought to myself, credibility. I always say to my businesses, so I picked up on my bags and moved. So I've been living in West Africa for the last 11 years, working in the entrepreneurship space, and really excited to now be working for the Aspen network of development entrepreneurs. So that kind of touches a little bit about who I am, why I'm where I am, and what I'm doing.
So you didn't know this, but you get a special gold star if you're able to name the podcast episode in your remarks. Credibility. I could not have written a better title. So we're going to roll with that. That's
Yeah.
great. Let's just move to your work now with the Aspen Network of
Mm.
Development Entrepreneurs and tell us your role with that. And of course, tell us what that organization is and does.
Yeah, Aspen Institute, I guess, is probably one of the oldest institutions you'll have it, especially from stateside. Started in 1949, way back when after the World War, to kind of really push peace and dialogue. So they've been in the thought leadership space for many years and a global recognition for that. But in 2009, they set up a program called the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, and effectively the network is a network organization, so it's a member-based organization, and it's the members include organizations that propel entrepreneurship in the global south. So our members include the likes of capacity development providers. When I say that, what does that mean? It means enterprise support organizations, incubators, accelerators, consultancies, etc., that provide support to entrepreneurs. We also have development finance institutions, impact investors, private equity firms, a whole range, basically those types of organizations that propel. And for our members, we have pathways of work. And I guess the three major pathways of work that relate to this conversation is really about, first and foremost, cultivating entrepreneurial ecosystems. What does that mean? It's really about making sure that we generate information, we build insights, we encourage collaborations and partnerships so we can share knowledge and we can drive economic growth in the regions. So that kind of expresses a little bit about ANDE. We also look at things like the impact small and growing business have in the development space as well, and the role they play in economic development. But more importantly, what we do is we want to match the entrepreneurs in the ecosystems in the global south to investors, wherever those investors may be. Those investors may be local, but then also international. And in terms of doing this work, we obviously know that a lot of the businesses, we provide them with insights into what will make them successful. What do they need to do to be able to attract investment, to grow their business, to create jobs, to create the solutions that we need in Africa to drive development. Another area, other things that we do, as well as the cultivating ecosystem, measuring impact, is also about being the voice of the small and grain business sector across the world. So we are the voice, and through being the voice, convenings, we host a whole range of convenings that enables us to share those insights, share those knowledge, and provide the space for collaboration to take place on the global stage. So that in me, if you let me talk, I will talk for hours. So I will slow down a little bit and stop there in terms of the work of ANDE.
For our listeners, I always prepare an outline for our podcast guest, and she's actually answered all the questions that I had with that. That was great. Absolutely great. This is just getting better and better. Maybe I could ask you to give us some examples of some of the work of ANDE, or some of the success stories, or some of the things you're an incredibly passionate woman, some of the things that you're the most passionate about.
Lola will tell you one of the biggest passion areas of it is how do we ensure that our businesses in Africa gain access to capital, gain access to markets, gain access to support. That for me is my passion, is my drive, and what gets me up in the morning. But what does that mean? It means that one of the biggest things that one recognizes when they work in the small business space is the challenges that businesses face in terms of getting access to these markets. What do they need to do? What do they need to learn? What do they need to have in place in order to improve these access points? And the first and foremost, and I used to be talking about these things in the UK even, standardization. There is standard practices required. There are standards that need to be met if you are going to attract investment. An investor needs to be comfortable with where they're putting their money. What does that mean? They need to know who they're investing in. And that's not just about the structures of the company, it's about the person, the people that are operating in this space. So my passion on the ground in Africa is making sure we share this knowledge with businesses, especially if you're looking to attract investment from outside. There are minimum standards required. In the Africa ecosystem, there are obviously many challenges that we face around the reasons why programs at CIP are running, which is why we are terribly excited about working with the Centre of International Private Enterprise and their Ethics First program, because it's a long game that we're playing here in terms of driving businesses to understand the importance of having standards if they are to attract finance. So we have to share, and sometimes working with that takes a while to generate, how do I put it, to make people feel comfortable, because it's changing the way people work. Any change management thing that you'll do in any organization takes time. So we start with the small wins. For example, we run learning labs, which is what we did with CIPE. We ran a series of learning labs across the region, working particularly in Nigeria, Ghana, and in Francophone countries, where again, sharing the importance of standards, sharing the stories that people will tell about the challenges they have in corruption. So I think for me, some of the best practice or the case studies that have worked well is those convenings that we've done with CIP and other members, where we're actually addressing those key challenges and hearing directly from the businesses about what those challenges are. I mean, and I have to say, one of the most exciting points for me is when I first met Lola, actually, when I came on board with the team probably 18 months ago for our West Africa convening. where we had the most amazing learning lab where it was about, okay, everyone, this is the space where we're going to be honest conversations, honest dialogue about the challenges businesses face in the environments that we're working in. I hate using the word corruption, to be honest. I'm not a fan of that word. But when you operate in systems like ours in West Africa, it is very difficult to break a systemic way of working. Corruption is endemic from the very top to the very bottom. Now, to change a system like that as an individual business is incredibly difficult when all they want to do is succeed. So, for me, some of the biggest moments were that particular workshop at the West Africa convening that really was like, whoa, where the businesses they were very clear about why it's so hard for them. People are rewarded for doing work in the way that we always do work. I think that's probably the way that I want to put it. By maintaining the system the way it is, it's easier for people just to conform, just to go with what is there, than trying to break a cycle. So most businesses opt for the easy option, just to go with the system, to go with the flow. So it's very difficult to be able to even challenge people to change. But it starts with the conversation, it starts with the open dialogue, it starts with the recognition that, yes, we have an issue, so that we can start to break down in the small ways how we can change that. And so for me, that was a highlight. And then the second highlight was when we cut the ribbon at the global event. At the global event, because we had a global conference in Accra. And the wonderful thing about that global conference was it took place outside of Washington for the first time. We always have our annual conferences in Washington, but we represent the global South. We work with the global South in order to ensure that we're hearing the right voices and we're engaging those people on the ground. We need to do our conference in the global South. Everybody agreed that it wasn't difficult to convince the team that it was the right thing to do. And because of my experience of doing events across the continent and in the UK, they were a little bit more confident about making it work. And we had an amazing conference in Accra in 2023. It was amazing. And we had a fantastic ribbon cutting moment with CIP where we're driving champions, trying to use champions in the sector to encourage businesses to look at their standards, to take a little bit of a serious look at why I'm struggling to raise finance or not. So these were the two headlines. These are two highlights that I've had since coming to the team 18 months ago. So thank you, Lola. You've given me my my exciting moments.
Well, Lola, that seems like a perfect transition to pitch it over to you.
Thanks, Dom, and gosh, thank you. I mean, look, I think my excitement is twice or three times the excitement that you also have, because just the ribbon cutting, I think we definitely talked about it. It's the supply chain integrity program, right? And a member that was part of one of our first sessions together became the first champion for ethics and integrity. And this is a business that you would say is a mid-sized business. And I think you really have run through all our points on our outline, which is exciting because it gives us the opportunity to talk about a few more things, which I guess maybe we can take Tom back to that room where we just talk about the real challenges and drill down on how do we start to break this cycle, which might be a normative one now. And my question to you is, so you've worked in the region for 11 years now. You've worked with businesses in England and I imagine in other countries as well. But now you've been in Africa for about 11 years. You've interacted with your members who support many MSMEs. How do we make the business case for anti-corruption to a small company that can demonstrate to you that it saves them time and resources to just pay a bribe today? Now, it may hurt them in the future, but today they will get by. Today they will fulfill that purchase order. How do we, you're great with publicity and messaging. what ideas would you share with us? Because this is the business innovations to
Mm.
tackle
Yeah,
issues
yeah,
podcast, right? So there are no easy answers here, and we're familiar with taking the uncharted territory to talk about how does business
yeah,
get ahead of
yeah.
tackling this mammoth of corruption.
That's the $1 million question, isn't it, really? Because if we have the answer to that, we'll all be millionaires for sure. I think for me, the way that we have to tell the story, and I'm going to be very honest here in terms of what this looks like, is we're very transactional in Africa. So, really, at the end of the day, if you're looking at a business and the business is looking to expand, the business is looking to attract investors or attract affordable finance. Let's be completely fair. The systems in Africa create very big challenges for businesses that want to access capital. It's so expensive. You can't go to a bank in West Africa and look for interest rates of less than 20-25%. For me, it's impossible to grow a business when if you're borrowing money at that level. It just doesn't make sense. So for me, the first point of convincing a business is from a viability point of view, in terms of you need access to finance to build your business, you need access to affordable finance. And although there's lots of things happening on the ground in countries like Nigeria, Ghana, where we're trying to address the the ability for SMEs to access finance, we're not there yet. So if we're providing those companies that can scale with an opportunity to access funding from outside the area, which means they have to adhere to standards. So for me, it's about telling the story of affordable finance, access, storytelling is another great way where you can show the successes of I mean, look at someone like Wangara Green Ventures. What a lovely story just to even express about a new growing fund in Africa, a green fund. And what they are driving is in order to bring affordable finance to our businesses in Ghana. We need to address this fundamental issue. And that in itself is encouraging for a business, because you're giving them you want cheap finance, you don't want cheap finance. You want access to more support, you don't want access to more support. And that's the way that I would suggest that we do it in a small way. The second thing is also about, look, ANDE is all about collaborations and partnerships. So so all the things that we do is about how do we drive the messaging, how do we tell the stories with our network of partners, our network of our communities of practice. So really, it's about, as a member organization, is research driving the research findings, driving the importance of sending those messages of why a company needs to change, using case studies to do that, but also champions. If we have champions on the ground, like a Wangara or any of the members of ANDE, many of them that have come on the programs have expressed, we really want to do this. How can we work with you to be able to get those messages right, to get our businesses to participate, so that they actually, as soon as anyone hears the word corruption, everyone just switches off. Oh, oh, this is the room. Oh, that's not for me. So we've got to find the narrative that doesn't instantly scare people as soon as they hear the word. So finding the way that we tell that story without those words, finding the ways to tell the stories. Because in that room on that West African convening, I heard some stories that nearly made me cry, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the levels of corruption that people have to go through, just to ask your driver to go and get something. It's just on every level. So breaking it down is a time-consuming thing, but it's with the champions, with appropriate messaging over a period, it's the same period, which is what CIP are doing, and we will get there. We will get there.
Yeah. Tom, I'll turn it over to you in a minute. I do want M to tell us, look into the future a little bit. Yeah.
Right, crystal ball.
Yes, I do want to take you into. So I like the fact that you reminded us that this is not a sprint. It's true. It really is not a sprint. And when Wangara's CEO was at the Conference of State Parties for UNCAC last year with us,
Mm.
it was just a moment of, it was coming together for me in a very profound way that, first of all, private sector is invited to COSP. And it's not just private sector like multinational companies, but it's a mid-sized firm supporting many really small micro green technologies companies in Ghana that's invited, right? And he got a lot of questions and folks listen, but the way he explained how Ethics First solves a problem for them resonates a lot with what you were saying about there is a problem. Businesses are focused on their problem and they want to survive. You're providing a solution, and just make sure that solution aligns with the core values of ethics and integrity and accountability, which shouldn't be a hard thing to do. So true, this is a long game. If you were to look into 10 years from now, building ethics first, getting more companies to understand these standards and this, do you think we would have moved the needle on the culture of corruption in the region? And if we wouldn't have, what would change? What would have changed?
Okay, an eternal optimist. So I will always have to think that
You're in good
10 years
company.
time, yeah, because why are we doing what we're doing if we don't think we can change it? So it's really, but it's about collaboration. It's about that. It's about really that momentum and buy-in from government. I think also needs to happen, because at the end of the day, we're all waving the flag for anti-bribery, anti-corruption, etc. But are we flying those flags with governments? Have we been endorsed by governments properly? You know where I'm going here, because every policy, every framework, we have lots of policy in our economies across, certainly I can speak for West Africa, we have lots of policy frameworks which mitigate against these things, that try to reduce levels of corruption, but they're not policed. Everyone can circumvent, you can get around these issues, it's ignored, it's just their fault. Basically, at the end of the day, we can just keep championing, keep telling the story, keep gathering momentum through networks like ANDE, because we've started the momentum on the ground with the agencies. So it's about continuing. Let's not drop off with the messaging. It might, if our messaging is consistent and we bring in all those ecosystem stakeholders to buy into this, government, public sector in particular, as well as the private sector, then we can combine. And even if we don't move the needle per se, because it's a big problem, if we can move the needle for businesses, for me, it's about some of those small network of businesses that understand, that are having good standards, and it's investor readiness. You can't, without, all investor ready companies should be encouraged to have this ethics first rubber stamp. So all the agencies, the accelerators, the incubators, the enterprise support organizations, if they commit to this, then we will change the bar for sure for businesses. Definitely.
I think you just set our 2024 strategy, and thank you.
Maybe 2030.
Yeah, that as well. The Africa we want.
Actually, for our listeners, the only thing I'm sorry about, if you're listening to this podcast, is you're not seeing it on YouTube, because the passion in this woman and the passion in Lola have just been incredible. Wow. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you, if our listeners wanted more information on yourself, ANDE, or really any of the topics we've touched on, what might be the best place or places for them to go?
First and foremost, LinkedIn, I think, is probably the best place for people to find information about me. Just type my name in, Ekong. You should be able to find out more about me and what I do. And in terms of the Aspen network of development entrepreneurs, look, because I guess I should do, this is where the type thing works, isn't it, Em? Yes, there are things that I'm a technophobe, so please forgive me. But
You're doing you just say it, we'll get it up there.
Yeah, ANDE, which is ANDE global.org. You can go onto our websites. and all the information is there in terms of how you can connect with us. We also have LinkedIn pages for ANDE West Africa. We have LinkedIn pages for the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs, which is global. And we have chapters throughout the Global South, 8 of them. So look us up. We're here to help and support our networks. And we'll be doing more stuff with Lola and CIPE. We have our Pan Africa conference, which will be in Abidjan. We were going to do it in Dakar, but certain political tensions happen and changes, so we have to be very agile in this region to change as and when you need to. So we'll be in Abidjan. So yeah, lots of convenings happening. So you can just watch this space, so to speak.
You may have added a subtitle to our credibility title, which is "Watch This Space."
Yes.
I cannot
Fantastic.
tell you how great this has been, Em. I hope we can continue this conversation. So on behalf of myself and Lola and Sipe, thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me here to speak with you today. And I'm looking forward to changing the world.